Hi, Tony.
Hi, Michael.
So, hi everyone out there. I just want you to know this could be the end of my friendship with Tony tonight. I don't know. It could be. I'm not sure. And I want to be clear on something for everybody who's watching right now. We wanted to bring you guys variety in the first episodes of War Stories. Very devoted to bringing you variety of topics as far as the types of movies that we're watching. They're all war stories, but we didn't want to over-index on World War II at the beginning, or all the films are about, Operation Desert Storm or anything like that. So I went off with the task of trying to find a movie that we could watch that was from before mechanized warfare. And the only thing I kept landing on that was truly historically based that I could tolerate was Kingdom of Heaven, but it's too long. It's like 3.5 hours, and I didn't want us to jump into that fast. So I told Tony last week, I said, well, there's this other movie in my collection. It's from World War I. It's about the aviators. It's an aviation action film. It's called Flyboys. And I'd seen it in the theater because I'm a history guy. So when they announced this film was coming out, I was like, ooh, and I went and I saw it in the theater. And I knew it wasn't the greatest film ever made or anything like that, but I hadn't really seen it since. So then I sat down to watch it. And that's when I realized Tony is watching this right now on the other side of the world, wondering what is wrong with his friend. So anyway, here we are, and we're talking about the 2006 movie Flyboys, starring James Franco, which is also a dull thud these days. Yeah. Our buddy Matt Movie 611 is here. Thank you for the super chat. He says, great series, guys. Thanks for introducing me to some new movie shows I may enjoy. Tonight is a May enjoy. And helping me
tonight, me and Michael have watched a film so that you don't have to. And when Michael says that in 2006 he went and saw this in the theater, he was one of only 5 people across the United States who went and saw this in the theater.
Absolutely true. Okay, as Rocket Raccoon said, that is also true. Jesse, I'm a big fan of the 13th Warrior as far as like what it tried to do. I don't know if it's really historically based, though. It's a movie set in the past, but it's a fictional story. So as far as I know. I want to explain real quick, Tony, the reasons why, because Chris is already saying you could have picked a much better and recent World War II aviation movie. 2008's The Red Baron. This movie is from 2006, Chris. So I don't know if you're much more recent is like accurate. You're 2 years off, but yeah, I get that. But I wasn't aware of that movie, because I don't even think that movie was shown in the United States. You're using its German title, which means it probably wasn't shown in the U.S. You got to keep that kind of stuff in mind as well. Also, it's stuff that we had on hand. And I admit I had Flyboys on hand. And I don't care how much anybody judges me for it, because I'm about to explain, okay? We'll get into the movie here in a second. See, now everyone's like, you should have watched Blue Max. Again, what I had on hand, all right? I'm aware of the Blue Max. I wasn't aware of the Red Baron movie. I'm also aware that Snoopy flies his doghouse as World War I aviator. We could have watched that. Laser Pants, thank you for the super chat. He says, I bet Bobby likes
maybe
Bobby's,
you do as well, Laser Pants.
Yeah, Bobby says he remembers the trailer for the Red Baron. That movie never showed here, as far as I know. Okay, so here we go. As a huge historical aviation person, enthusiast, whatever you want to call it, when this movie was advertised, even though it was Dean Devlin, who is half of the Independence Day creative team, which makes me want to run for the hills, I was like, why? It's kind of like when Super 7 announced Silverhawks action figures. I was like, why did Super 7 have to be the one tied to this thing? Why was Dean Devlin tied to the one World War One aviation film that had been made in quite a while in the United States. And there's a family connection to this, which is why I went and saw the film in the theater. So right here behind me in this box is, let me open this up. This is a family relic. This is my great-grandfather's World War One aviation cap.
Wow.
And he trained biplane pilots to go overseas in World War One. He was held back because he scored very highly on his mechanical aptitude test. And so they wanted him to help train people for this pioneering technology out of an airfield here in the United States. I also have 3 bits of show and tell here. I actually have his flight pants, but they are in they're in preservation paper in a special box. I didn't want to undo the work that had been done.
Understandably, yeah.
To put those, you can't even see them. They're wrapped up in like tissue. So here, crap. This is a propeller hub from one of the planes that he cracked up at the airfield way back during the war. And it actually says, if I don't have this upside down, it actually says 80 horsepower Renault on it. This was a propeller for a very common 8-cylinder biplane engine back then that was used in a lot of these airplanes. And then lastly, and this is going to come into play when we talk about the movie for sure. This was my great-grandfather's Army issue Colt that he was given as a biplane pilot because all the biplane pilots during World War I had a sidearm. And this is his. And it actually was thanks to Scott Hughes, who is a member of this community, who is very knowledgeable about firearms. He came to check this thing out, and he found out that it actually carries the personal cartouche on it of John Thompson, who was a inspector for Colt at the time. So John Thompson, the inventor of the Thompson submachine gun, or Thompson machine gun, actually inspected this revolver, probably, and many more. I didn't say it was single action, Jesse. I said it was a Colt revolver. I don't believe I called. Oh, maybe he's talking to Michael Schaefer. So, okay. Yeah, this is a double action. Anyway, so my point is that there is this World War I aviation thing that runs throughout my family's history a little bit. So I ran to see this movie, and I walked away from it at the time in 2006 feeling a bit conflicted. I wasn't sure how I should feel. I wasn't sure if I should give it the A for effort or if I should be brutally objective like I am now. But now I'm a different man than I was in 2006. Now I am brutally objective. So, Tony, do you want me to set up the premise for this movie, or would you like to do the honors?
I'll have a crack. I'll have a crack. So this 2006 movie starring James Franco and Jean Reno, who is an actor that I love from movies like The Professional, or I think maybe you guys call it Leon. It's had different names in different countries. Yeah, so this 2006 science fiction fantasy comedy. I think it's a comedy. Basically, we have not a group of Americans. We follow during the introduction, particularly James Franco. He's living on his family's ranch. His parents have passed away. The ranch is being foreclosed on by the bank. And then he sees a kind of black and white newsreel about Americans who are traveling to Europe to help with the war effort during World War I. And they're helping by training to be fighter pilots with this new technology. So he decides he's going to travel to Europe, and I don't know if the intent is to just walk away from his problems or try and earn money as a pilot to pay off the ranch. That's all a little bit confusing to me. I did only watch this once, so I couldn't put myself through it a second time. So.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
And when I say I watched it once, I watched it over a 3-day period.
Yeah, I can understand why. When I was sitting back through it in preparation for this, I was like, why am I wanting to get up and like walk away? And again, it's where the movie rides this line on a high level of there's like this gray area with it where you can tell the movie had money. Like, in other words, the movie had a budget. It had production value.
$60 million.
Yes. And yet, something about it feels like if it was made today, it would be one of those straight to Netflix things that you would scroll by and click on. It's better than those as far as production value. I don't mean script. I don't mean anything like that. As far as the way it looks, the shots, the actors they got, everything like that, it's better than those straight to Netflix war films. Absolutely. But something about the writing, something about the way the scenes play out, something about that feels like one of those straight to Netflix war films where a bunch of guys got together because they had a digital effects program and they're college buddies, and they had a dude who like loved World War II props, and they like made a movie. Like, it's not like that, but anyway, so please continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So, basically they a bunch of different American guys arrive in France, and then kind of the opening parts of the film are them they very quickly get introduced to Martin Henderson's character, who has obviously been fighting the war for quite some time, and we learn very quickly that he's one of the few surviving pilots, and that, you know, that old war cliche, all his friends are dead.
Right.
That type character. So you've got this experienced guy who's been around and doesn't have a lot of time for the new guys. And then the rest of them go and live in a mansion with a lion.
Well, I've got clips for all of this, by the way.
While they start to learn how to fly biplane.
Yeah. So there's like a whole handful of cliches that get thrown at you right at the beginning. Lion notwithstanding. Gerard O'Connor, thank you for the super chat. He says, hey, you guys. Hey, chat. Never viewed this particular movie yet. Look forward to the insight to come. We'll certainly watch the movie soon. So you think, sir. So you think. And then Rebel X Studios, thank you. He says, loved your guys' thrashing of the Hurt Locker. Michael, when are you going to get to Iron Eagle? Okay, so Rebel X Studios. I need to maybe explain to you what this show is. So unless you can tell me what war or historical engagement Iron Eagle is set in, I don't know if we will be doing Iron Eagle. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm simply saying that these are all films.
These are the rules that we've created for this series. So that's why I'll keep going back to the example of the first 3 Rambo films. First Blood and First Blood Part 2 don't qualify because they are not part of a real world conflict.
Right.
Whereas Rambo 3 is set during the Russian-Afghan War, qualifies as a fictional story as part of a real world conflict. So, like Charlie Sheen's Navy SEALs does not fit here. Thank God.
Yeah, it's war stories is war stories, even if they're fictionalized within the campaign. It's not just action movies, you know. It's war story. Yeah. Werewolf by Lunchtime, thank you for the super chat. He says, hi from Perth. Why is it so early? Good question. And then Louis says, Red Dawn is set a couple of weeks from now. Let's hope not. So I have some clips to show what Tony's been talking about. Like he said, James Franco's character has had the bank foreclose on his ranch, and he just beat up the banker or something like that. So he's got to get out of town. He sees a newsreel for pilots from America volunteering to join the French Air Force, the Lafayette Escadrille, to fight the Germans, the invading Germans. So he heads over there, and A bunch of other Americans head over there as well, and they're all kind of the cliche stereotypes. Like you've got the rich kid from privilege whose dad is disappointed in him for not making anything of himself, and he wants him to go find his manhood or whatever. And then you've got the guy who is leaving the bride to be back home, and he wants to go be like his family and fight in a conflict because his family has a military history, and he wants to go come back with medals. And then you've got James Franco, who's just getting out of town because he wants to figure out a way to get his ranch back. You've got a real life character whose name in the movie is Skinner. His real name was Bullard, but he is a African American man who went over to Paris and became a boxer, and then joined the French army in real life, and then eventually joined the French Air Force and became one of the first black pilots. And he's in it. And as a matter of fact, he's probably the most accurately portrayed character in this movie, if that's even a thing. There's a wide margin of inaccuracy here because they're all pastiches. So I have some clips here to kind of set up what Tony just described. So we'll go through these. This is the beginning of, I've skipped over all the stuff regarding why they're leaving the United States. And this is when they meet Jean Reno for the first time. And they're in their uniforms, they're on the airfield, and the weathered flight commander shows up, Cassidy. His plane comes in on fire, and Jean Reno is like, don't pay any attention to that. Keep your eyes forward on me. You know, this is how it is every day at this place. Cassidy gets out of the plane, and Cassidy walks up, and that's right, of course, as our hero, James Franco, shows up late and not in uniform because Hollywood. So here you go.
On the right, you've got the English squadron. They fly the Bristol, the Sopwith, and the SE-5 Ace.
So that's just them getting set up, and then we have the intro of Rawlings, played by James Franco.
And we'll see which one of you becomes your squadron's first ace.
That'll be me.
Who are you?
Lane Rawlings.
And then finally, we have the weathered Captain Cassidy, who is getting out of the plane behind Jean Reno and comes walking up.
Go home while you still can.
Guy sure knows how to make friends.
All his friends are dead.
Wah, wah. So he's that character, you know, the guy who's been in combat for so long that he's the last survivor of the wave of guys that he came in with. And he's, you know, this, I don't remember if he's like a triple ace or something like that in the context of the movie, but he's shot down a lot of biplanes. So then, as Tony said, they get sent to a chateau where they're going to be billeted, as they say. And they are introduced unexpectedly to the squadron mascot.
Oh my God!
Rawlings down! Whoa,
Whisk!
Come on. Now there, cowboy. Having a little trouble with the dogie?
Having a little trouble with the dogie?
So this is what 15 minutes into the film, and I was like, I don't know if there is any historical precedence for them having a lion roam around with no leash.
I can answer that. I can actually answer this because after I saw this movie for this show, I went, oh, I know we don't normally do historical inaccuracy comparisons and we focus on, you know, mainly the production. But in this case, I'm going to have some answers in my back pocket. So I ran off and did some research. Squadrons in World War I and sometimes in World War II, they did have mascots that were animals, but normally they were cats, dogs, a bird occasionally, things like that. They were not wild, exotic animals. This was all because, and I say this with a straight face, these were all wild American guys who showed up in Paris, and they ran off and they found 2 lion cubs for sale and bought them and named them Whiskey and Soda and brought them back. and they were the mascots there, unleashed, and finally a French commander told them, this is unacceptable. We can't have grown lions, because they grew up pretty quickly, and then all of a sudden you can't really control them anymore. And they were like, you can't have this anymore. You got to get them out of here. And so they gave them to like the Paris Zoo, and they stayed there throughout. And then after the war, they lived for several years. But there actually is a subplot that's in the deleted scenes. It's cut out of this movie where that all plays out, where the French commander who comes in, he's higher than Jean Reno, and he tells them, you've got to get rid of the lion. And then there's like more historical inaccuracy, because then James Franco finds the lion at in a gypsy caravan. It's like part of a gypsy caravan, and it's like in a caged wagon. And so they thankfully cut all that out of the movie, because there was no point to it anyway. But yeah, they actually did have lions in the Lafayette Escadrille for a while.
Wow.
It may very well be, next to Skinner, the most accurate part of this movie, which is like, wow. Okay. So yeah,
it was fun. I just saw someone in the comments before saying that CGI lion was that liar convoy photo bombing the movie. I'm paraphrasing. It was something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, Jesse, there were mascots throughout the 2 world wars. It's hard to keep track of them all. But yeah, they were yeah. All right. So now we have all the guys having to get into their rooms. And so the commanding officer's subordinate, who looks super French, like they found the Frenchest looking guy to play the subordinate. He's got the big mustache, and he's got the prominent
straight
ear.
out of a low.
Yeah. It's like, wow. He starts assigning them their rooms, and the rich kid doesn't want a room with the black guy, the black boxer. So we have this moment right here. Oh, I guess I cut that. Did I cut that moment out or not? I don't think I did. All right, here we go.
It would be like sharing a room with one of my servants back home.
Larry, what put you in tour with Spiegel?
Let's get it over with. You got any objection to rooming with a colored man?
I don't know. You're the first one I ever seen up close. I heard it's good luck to rub your head.
I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Just telling you what I heard.
Probably my favorite exchange in the whole movie, because it's just kind of funny. Where he's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I'm just telling you what I heard. I did get a genuine kick out of that from an acting perspective. I thought that was nicely performed. But yeah, so everybody's kind of getting to know one another. We, as the audience, are starting to understand their archetypes. Rich kid, black boxer guy who wants to, continue to find his way in the world. Rawlings, who's kind of a devil-may-care dude who's got nothing to lose.
He's the Han Solo of this movie, yeah.
Yes, he's Jensen is the character I told you about, who has the everybody who has the not war bride, but the bride to be back home, and he wants to become a hero. You've also got Beagle, who is probably the most obnoxious character in the film. We find out a lot more about him later. You'll see more clips of him momentarily. But yeah, there's this pastiche of characters. Now, Tony, I'm gonna play a clip here in a second, but I want to plant this idea in everybody's mind first. When you saw Cassidy in the very beginning, even in the brief time that you see him, because first he's getting out of his plane, then he's gigging James Franco about being afraid of the lion and all that kind of stuff. I got the impression on this watch that I really wished that the actor playing Cassidy was the actor playing Rawlings, just because he seems to be a better performer. There just seems to be something about James Franco's performance that is very caricature and lacking in this movie. There's something he's not helping me immerse. He's not helping me buy it. There's something about his performance that's very like, I don't know, like he almost like he's doing a stereotype.
He's James Franco. He likes smoking weed.
Yeah.
And even, that very first scene that you played the clip where he shows up, not in his uniform, and he's doing that funny thing where he's squinting his eyes, and I'm just like,
yeah.
Everyone else knows they're in a period film. He thinks he's in a modern science fiction fantasy.
Yes.
Something.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something off about his performance. He almost sounds like he should be on an episode of Hee Haw or something like that. Like, because like he's doing an SNL bit rather than. I feel like I actually do feel like he's taking the movie seriously, but I don't think he has the chops to pull off period historical drama, especially when they're asking him to be a Texan or whatever he just doesn't have it. Brian Dillingham, thank you for the Dillinghamsm. He says, over there. Let's see. And then Rebel X Studios, thank you for the super chat. He says, so by your rules, does that mean Strike Commando qualifies? Because that was set during the Vietnam War. If what you say is true, I guess technically I need to find out more about that movie.
Never heard of it. That sounds cheaper than a Canon film.
Yeah, if it's like a guy who's a cyborg or something, then I don't know. Yes, Kieran, we can do everything possible to get you banned from watching this movie. Okay. Right. Matt, good to hear from you, dude. Thank you for giving us the update. I'm glad you're doing better. I'm so glad. All right. So I'm doing the so thing a lot tonight, and please, I'm not even going to care this time because we're getting through a dog here. All right. I got to do what I got to do to get everybody through this experience.
Yep.
They go out that night as a group. They've never been anywhere. They haven't gone flying. They haven't been trained. None of that stuff. They go to I guess, not the officers' mess, but the flying club. They go to the flying club to have a drink. And they are confronted by RAF guys who tell them to get out because they haven't been in combat yet. They haven't killed anybody. And they said, this is a club for killers and you haven't shot anybody down. Get out. And Cassidy is in there. And the RAF guy says something racist to Skinner. So Skinner punches his lights out because the RAF guy doesn't know that Skinner is a professional boxer. The other people then recognize him as famous boxer. I think his name's Eugene Skinner or something like that. And they say, oh, yeah, he's a professional boxer. I saw him fight in Paris. You're going to get your lights punched out if you keep this up. And then Cassidy comes over to them because they're all still standing in the doorway. And Cassian says this.
Till you actually do something, you're not even in this war, let alone in this room.
We're all fighting for the French. Same as you.
Not the same as me.
So, I almost did so good. He kicks him out because they haven't actually fought in the war. Tony, I know that all these different military units throughout time, and it changes with the era in which we're in, changes even from decade to decade sometime, and especially what arm of the military you're in, they have their own quirks and everything like that. Would this be something in today's military that they would do to noobs? Is this something they would say, hey, you're not really ready to be here yet. We don't want you here.
Look, if they've kind of just turned up and they're the ones in training, they haven't passed out yet, there would probably be rules about them not going to the flying club or whatever it is. But I don't think it would be a rule around whether you've shot a plane down or not. This is that same issue that we had with the Hurt Locker, where they had to create this inner conflict. We talked a lot about that in the last episode, where they don't want to depict the Iraqi bomb makers as the enemy because, the political correctness of the modern era. So they have to create this inner conflict, and that's what they're doing here. You've already seen conflict among the new squadron with, doesn't want the black guy in his room. And now here you've got the conflict between the RAF guys with Cassidy, who's been there a while. What I do think is good is when I can't remember his name, the black boxer, when
Skinner.
Yeah, when he punches out the RAF guy. The RAF guy, first of all, as they're walking out, he touches him on the back of the head.
Mm-hmm.
He turns around, he decks him, and then when they're leaving, he turns around to James Franco's character, going back to that sort of joke moment they said before. He's like, "Told you not to touch me on the head or rub my head or whatever it was."
Right.
Like, yep, message received.
He's one of the more enjoyable characters in the movie. Like, he's one of the characters that I kind of latch onto and say, please get me through this experience. And it's not, I don't want to oversell the idea that this is like The Room or anything like that. It's watchable, but it's just not memorable or engaging. There's something missing. There's a spark missing from this movie. As far as our discussions, and before I hold on, Scott Knudsen, thank you so much for the kind super chat. He says, setting aside the quality of this movie, I'm trying to wrap my head around the courage it took to get into one of those machines and go shoot at each other. Scott, I'm so glad you said that, because it dovetails nicely with what I was about to mention. And then Gerard O'Connor, thank you for the super chat. He says, okay, starting to get a read on this. Might just watch the new Batman movie again instead. Well, there's still some footage coming up. You might be morbidly curious. I asked you the question about the Flying Club, Tony, to kind of set a baseline for where the viewer really can't have any certainty about what's accurate and what's not in this movie at a glance. In other words, we can't take a lot at face value, because not realizing I would run into this information, the guy they hired to be the historical advisor. Did you read this too?
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude, this is crazy. Like, I was like, what? You must have it pulled up. I see. What? Do you have it pulled up?
I do. I had to have this.
Oh, please read this. Oh my God.
Story. I've got it here somewhere. Okay. I couldn't believe I read this literally 10 minutes before I sat down to do the episode with you. The film's only military advisor for the entire project was Jack Livesey, a convicted defrauder who fabricated his resume and military service to gain employment as an administrative assistant at the Imperial War Museum in London. Livesey was charged and convicted with fraudulently claiming £30,000 in benefits. Livesey had served 3 years in the British Army Catering Corps. His claims of service in Northern Ireland, the Falkland conflict, and that he was a curator of the Imperial War Museum were not true.
Yeah. So everything, and keep in mind, like, this guy, scummy as he is, he might have actually known his historical stuff, but according to everything I've read, probably not very. I mean, obviously Hollywood loves to take a historical advisor and go, thanks for that information, we'll put it in our back pocket and then ignore it. So there's some of that going on, but also now we have a convicted felon who is tied to this movie. And it makes me wonder, because this movie was independently financed by Dean Devlin and his friend, could they not afford the Hollywood regulars, you know, to come in and advise them on the project? Could they not get Dale Dye or somebody to come in and help them out? Jeff, I really don't think this is the time to get nitpicky on this stuff, because you're talking about Flyboys from 2006, man. This is not a history lesson. And if you think this movie is a history lesson, you are in the wrong place. Okay. In fact, let's just replay the opening right here.
Right? You've got the English squadron. They fly the Bristol, the Sopwith, and the SE-5 Ace.
Okay, so they said the British squadron. They didn't say RAF, but I'm trying to find out if the patches on the guys in the flying club in the beginning were RAF. I want to say they looked like they were RAF, but
they look exactly like what you're wearing on your jacket there.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if they let's see if I can find the name of the guy who played him. Let's see, was he Ives, Mac McDonald, Lyle Port? I don't see, these guys don't look like they do in the movie. So you're looking at them going, let's see. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm just trying to point out that this movie is not something where, you know, And if you want us to call them Royal Flying Corps because you're like OCD or whatever, drop it. Like just drop it. All right. RAF is shorthand for British pilots. We're moving on. Okay. So we have them kicked out of the flying club, and now they go into training. The training sequence is one of the better done parts of the film, I thought, just from a filmmaking perspective. I thought, okay, they got a nice little montage going here. They're showing some of the basic things they go through to prepare for G-forces and spotting enemy planes and stuff like that. I thought that was, I don't know. I felt like that was one of the better parts of the film. What did you think?
I actually found that quite interesting. You know, there's, like I say, it's a montage. I can't remember all of it, but obviously there's a bit where they're sitting each guy down in a chair and they're spinning the chair around really fast. And then when the chair stops, they've got to get up and walk along a red line on the ground.
Right.
You know, and it's to get them used to, you know, all these high speed maneuvers in the plane and basically trying to train themselves to not get overly dizzy. Right. But then there's also a scene where they're practicing their firing the machine gun from the cockpit, and the actual prop used, I was like, wow, that's really, really a well-made prop. It looks, it's like this small version of the cockpit with the machine gun, and it's on like a little railway track. And the guy who's obviously training, he's in the cockpit with the machine gun, you know, and a mock-up set of the controls, and then a few other guys, they wheel it along the track, and they kind of move the tail around to try and throw him off. And just that moment, I was like, I wonder if that is historically accurate. I have a feeling it probably was.
Yeah, it looked credible, I guess. Yeah. I have a little bit of that right here.
7, 8, 9, stop. Come on, man. Watch your balance. No.
It is not just to make it look good for the girls, but to keep your neck from being irritated from the constant turning to spot enemy aircraft.
Left. Right.
So for those of you watching, that's Beagle shooting very poorly in the gunner practice chair. This is going to become a subplot for his character very quickly, we might add. I'm actually like following. I pulled so many clips from this movie, and I told Melinda when I was pulling them, I said, you know, with Hurt Locker, as much as I didn't like that movie, it was easy to pull the clips from it where the beats were, where the film had these like milestone moments. Whereas this movie, everything kind of plays out either too long or in pieces. And so when you're trying to pull clips together for a show like War Stories, you're like, oh, that clip's too long, and I don't know if that's going to cut together and make sense. And it's like, it's very hair pulling. So I actually have more clips in this than I think we've ever had for a War Stories episode, so I could keep track of the plot. Like, it's literally me just trying to keep track of the plot. The next bit,
that's good, because you need to keep me on track, because the plot was a little bit lost on me.
The plot of this movie is one of those scripts where, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. It's just kind of that's one of the big issues with the movie, is that there's no end game. There's nothing for the audience to latch onto, except for a flimsy bit of business with Black Falcon, who is the nickname they've given this German fighter ace who flies a black tri-wing biplane, and he's really evil, you know, which we'll get into in a minute. But other than that, there isn't really much here to latch onto. So as you saw,
and you know from early on as well, with the conflicts that there's, like, you know, but Beagle being this terrible shot, the rich kid not wanting to room with the black guy. You know, by the end of the movie, Beagle's going to see redemption. I have a big problem with a lot of redemption stories in historical war movies, because as harsh as it is to say, not a lot of people actually get a chance at redemption in war.
Right.
Yeah,
And there's like
so you know going into this that eventually the rich kid's going to like the black guy. You know, Beagle.
Right.
It's one of those films. You know where it's going.
There's so many subplot redemption stories that it gets kind of ridiculous. You've got like 3 or 4 different guys who have like this arc that they go through. And by extension, you have Rawlings, who really, he has a few contrived dialogue scenes with Cassidy, but otherwise he's really an unchanged guy from the beginning to the end. There's really nothing that he goes through in this movie that's, I mean, it kind of
he has the whole romance, which I'm sure we're going to get into. He has this whole romance with a French girl.
And
then when the movie closes, it just goes nowhere.
Oh yeah. It reminds me of what Michael J. Fox said about his character in the first Back to the Future. He said, in the first Back to the Future, he said, I was the lens through which the audience experienced other characters' arcs. Marty is pretty much the same guy at the end that he was at the beginning of that movie. So that's why in part 2 and 3, they had to give him that whole chicken thing. Don't call me chicken, because they knew to get him through 2 more movies, they had to give him something to get over, which they even admitted was kind of a contrived square peg, round hole kind of thing. Well, Rawlings is like, I'm not saying the movies is the same quality as Back to the Future, okay, guys? I'm simply saying that Rawlings is much like Marty McFly in the first Back to the Future, where you're kind of watching everybody else either get redeemed or face their demons through him. He's like a Cypher. He's almost like he's like a Rey Skywalker. Like there's nothing to him. There's nothing going on with him,
He's like every single character in Hurt Locker.
Yes. He has speeches where he says there's stuff going on with him, but it's very minor and it's not really, he's just this kind of bulletproof guy that just, I don't know. Beagle is a terrible shot. As you saw in the clip earlier, Beagle can't shoot the broadside of a barn. He keeps blaming the machine guns. He keeps blaming the sights. He blames everything but himself. And finally, they tell Rawlings, who's a really good shot, they say, take Beagle up and get him some more practice in the air shooting at ground targets.
Yeah.
So they go up there, and Beagle is an idiot. He's a moron. He's an arrogant, he's punching above his weight, way above his weight, and he can't hack it, but he won't take responsibility for his own screw ups. So we have this moment where Beagle gets them both in trouble.
Right, there's something wrong with the gun. And I know I can fly it, and I know I can shoot. Hey, Rawlings? What? We're out of gas. What?
So the idiot that can't fly and can't shoot also didn't check the gas before they left, which is one of the things they talked about earlier in the film during training. Always make sure that your plane is fueled, because that's the last thing you want. They crash, and then it's a sort of movie cliche where, the eyes open and everything's blurry at first. And then you see all of these women, these French women in, corsets looking over Franco.
Yep.
And they've been taken to a brothel in the village, and they're in this brothel. And there's this girl there named Lucienne, who you find out is actually not an employee of the brothel. She is the person that found them. She lives in a small farmhouse a ways away or something. And she found them while she was walking to the village or something. She found the crash, and she took them to the nearest place, which was the brothel, to get help. And she's there trying to help James Franco. He's got a cut on his leg and all this kind of stuff. The squadron then shows up to pick them up because they went looking for them and traced them to the brothel, right as James Franco is getting to know Lucienne in a friendly, non-James Franco kind of way. He's definitely playing a character at this point, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
So here is a little bit of a moment between him and Lucienne right at the end of their initial encounter when Jensen, the guy with the bride-to-be in the United States, he comes in and does something very inappropriate with Lucienne.
Hey, watch it.
What the hell? She's a chippy, not a nurse.
Sorry about that. Listen, it was really nice to meet you.
Merci.
Yeah. That was for you.
In that moment, that's probably the most that's probably in any movie I've ever seen, because like James Franco loves to play himself in a lot of things. He's basically himself in most of these movies. In that moment, I was like, wow, like James Franco's actually playing totally against his actual personality there. Like he's actually being like this nice guy toward women. But the other interesting part of that from a character perspective, a character dynamic thing, is that Jensen is supposed to be the wholesome guy with the bride back home, and he wants to be the war hero. He's very clean cut, lantern jaw, wants to come back home. And he's the one goosing this girl that he's never met before and being a jerk after he's already, and I didn't have a clip of this, but after he's already told everybody else that he feels like that we are knights of the air. We're these noble knights of the air. And you're looking at him going, do you not know how your words run contrary to your behavior? Like you're kind of a ne'er-do-well. So yeah, I just wanted to have that moment. I wanted to also point out to everybody, as far as clips go, that's the first and last time. Oh no, there's one more clip with Lucienne. After you see the next clip with Lucienne in a few minutes, that'll be the last time you see Lucienne in this War Stories episode. We'll continue to talk about her, but there was no point in pulling any more clips because it's always the same scene over and over again after this. It never changes. All right. Where are we in the story now? They come out of the brothel. Cassidy is just pulling up with a bottle of champagne and flowers, and he goes into the brothel, and they're all like, wow.
On a really nice looking motorcycle, I might add.
Yes, like very nice looking motorcycle.
A very historically accurate, you know, turn of the century motorcycle and sidecar.
Yeah, the hardware in this movie is pretty good, even when it's historically slipped in places. So, for example, I learned that the Fokker triplanes actually showed up after the Newports, which is what they say is the new plane for the Allies. And so when the Newports show up and they're like new, you're like, well, okay. But then you find out that the historical advisor was, you know, a criminal. So whatever. I guess we're lucky he knew what Newports and triplanes were. Yeah. Okay, so now they're getting prepped for their first battle. They're getting out into the plains. They've been sent on their first mission, and Cassidy comes up to Beagle and Rawlings right as they're about to get in their brand new planes, and he says, here's some final advice.
What's this for? Plane catches fire, you got three choices. You can stay in it and burn with it all the way to the ground. You can jump from several thousand feet, or you can take the quick and painless way out.
This is true. There was no parachuting back then. So, you know, they apparently parachutes were being developed, but at the time they felt like it was like being a cavalryman, where they're like, a good soldier never leaves his horse, and you will fight in the plane till you're dead. They're, you know, and if you have to, if the plane catches fire, kill yourself. But the pistol wasn't just for that. The movie is misleading. The pistols were standard issue, so in case you went down behind enemy lines, you had self-defense in order to get back to your own line. So the movie skews that whole idea a lot. You know, they didn't do it this badly in Pearl Harbor, but in Pearl Harbor, for example, even though Ben Affleck is allegedly fighting in the Battle of Britain, which we'll go into that movie one day. He pulls a Webley out when he knows he's going down. And I'm going, if you were a pilot in the Battle of Britain, you wouldn't be, and you were on the British side, you wouldn't be carrying a revolver because you're over home territory. There's no reason that you wouldn't have done that. But he uses it to blast open the stuck canopy latch, which I'm going, it's like that. They're making the revolver seem like it's for a purpose that it's not expressly for. The express purpose is going down behind enemy lines and coming back safely, or, you know, whatever. Then we get our first combat sequence in the film. I'm going to play some clips, and then Tony, I'm going to start asking you the hard questions. All right, here we go.
All right. Beautiful countryside.
I'm checking for super chats here real quick. Okay, no super chats. All right, we're good. Okay. In 2006, I will say that in the theater watching this, as somebody who was very nervous about aerial combat effects, it looked like some of the nicest flight sim footage we have now. Like, in other words, the graphics, they were still clearly graphics, but they were very, very well done graphics for what you were looking at. Like, I sat there going, wow, I wish I had that kind of effects capability to make my own Battle of Britain movie. You know, like, I wish I had that kind of resource to do that. I thought that was pretty well done. And when I went and read reviews of this movie to prepare for this show, because I started to have to, because I'm like, I got to find out what happened with this film. It seems to have the same criticisms, or I should say the same compliments levied against it that Memphis Belle does, which is the movie's actual military mechanics and historical accuracy are very problematic, but the combat footage is really nice. That's what they said. The combat footage is quite nice. If you don't worry about the fact that, you know, they claimed that the Allied planes were newer than the D-1s, which doesn't matter once they're in the air. That's fine, whatever. Then the footage is very nice. Somebody also said that most of the triplanes were not painted red. It was only like one squadron, but Dean Devlin decided to make that change for the audience's sake so that they could tell which side was fighting which side. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I thought it was pretty nice, but what did you think of the combat effects and just the combat in general?
It starts off not too bad. Like I was, you know, this film is 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this film is only 7 years apart from the Phantom Menace, and you know, when you look at the CGI, it's almost on par.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Gungan battle and all that stuff. So I think for me though, we get a number of action scenes in this, more than I kind of expected. This movie is easily 45 minutes longer than it needed to be.
Yes, very much so.
It's a 2 hour, 20-minute film that I would almost describe the same way that I described the Snyder Cut of Justice League, which was a 4-hour bowel movement. This film felt a lot longer than 2 hours, 20 minutes. But
yes,
I found that it's almost like for the next scene, rather than advancing the story, the filmmakers are like, right, we've got to up the stakes. And it goes from kind of quite credible into, by the final scene, I wasn't watching James Franco in the cockpit. It was Vin Diesel in Fast and the Furious set in World War One.
Yes. Yes.
That's where it ends up going. So this early scene, I was like, hey, this film might not be that bad.
See, that's what I thought I was walking into upon rewatching it. I was like, okay. I was like, I don't remember much about this movie from 2006 in theater. This film probably won't be that bad. And then I was like, oh no, like this, I immediately regret this decision. They have a new guy in their squadron who was introduced prior to this mission. he painted a woodpecker on the side of his ship because his plane, because his idea was, I'm going to punch a lot of holes in the Germans with my machine guns. He gets shot down, but he crash lands and he belly lands and he's fine. The Black Falcon, which is the one German in the black triplane. All the other triplanes are red. His is black so the audience can see him easily in the combat footage. He comes swinging around and sees the guy on the ground waving at his friends. I'm okay. I'm okay. And he shoots him and kills him. And then this other dude who's an ally of his, who's in a red plane with crossed swords on the side, I'll call him crossed swords. There is this overly telegraphed acting moment. I'm sure they thought it was for the benefit of the audience, but man, like it starts to put the cliches in concrete for this movie. Like there's no escape. This movie has no escape plan after this. And I get it, you know, they've got to figure out a way to visually express this to the audience across two airplanes and all that kind of stuff. I don't think the Germans in this movie say one thing. I think they truly are. You see their faces always behind goggles, but I think these Germans are pretty much dialogueless villains in this film. They're just kind of airplanes to shoot down. There's no development of them aside from what Cassidy tells them occasionally about Black Falcon and Cross Swords guy and all this kind of stuff. And what they're setting up there is that the Black Falcon guy has no honor and he's ruthless and he's really dangerous and he's a sadist and all this kind of stuff. And then the Cross Swords guy is the guy who has honor and he still has standards or principles in the air and all this kind of stuff. A few minutes later, I'm trying to remember. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I'm getting ahead of myself. They get down on the ground after the battle because they got jumped. And James Franco Rawlings is very upset that that kid got shot while unarmed on the ground. Like so he's talking to Jean Reno and he says,
"What about none? He was just sitting there on the ground."
A lot has happened in this war before you got to it.
I thought there's supposed to be some sort of honor in the way we fight.
You're the man in the air. You're the man with the gun.
Cassidy has just been seen taking off again, I think, to go hunting on his own, which I know that was a thing. Like, I know they did that back in the day. Some of them even did it in World War II. But it becomes this heavy setup where what they're saying is, you know, in order to get justice for your guys, you're going to have to take matters into your own hands and basically work overtime. Like, you're going to have to work outside the mission briefings and the mission hours. You're going to have to pull some overtime if you want to deal with some of this stuff. I thought that one moment, it sticks with me, and I didn't remember it until it was coming up when I was rewatching it, and I immediately looked at the screen 3 seconds before it happened, and I was like, I was like, really? Like, this is where we are? Okay. Just checking the chat here real quick, because
who's the villain in Rocky and Bullwinkle?
It's Natasha and Boris.
Yeah, that was Boris.
Boris and Natasha. It's. I wish we could have had some. I almost wish I know they were economizing, and I think they did it poorly with that. It would have really helped because we see their airfield later on in the movie for 1 second. We see the German airfield. Yeah. It would have been nice if they had hopped out of their airplanes and the one guy comes running over to the other guy and starts reading him the riot act and yelling at him because he's continuing to be this awful human being. At least that, have the subtitles up there like they did for the French. but except in German. That would have been nice. Like I would have, that would have helped me out a little bit, but no, all we get is,
But another part of me though is like, this is before the Geneva Convention and all that stuff, but doesn't say anything about shooting down pilots.
No.
Like, is it actually that? Okay, so plane crash lands, and now I can't shoot him. Like, he's behind enemy lines. He's got a revolver.
And as Bobby is saying right here, he says there's a lot of historical precedents for Germans not acting like this. There was a different level of code of honor intrinsically in World War I in a lot of the different military arms, but particularly the flying corps. They seem to have this kind of unspoken respect for one another, and some of that did carry over into World War II in some ways. Like Douglas Bader, they arranged for his steel legs to be brought over on a flight where the Germans weren't going to shoot down the RAF plane, so that because he got shot down and so that he needed another pair of legs. But then there were moments where, during the Battle of Britain, Hugh Dowding even told all of his men, because his men were horrified, all the pilots were horrified that the Germans were shooting at parachuting RAF guys. And they were told, don't shoot at parachuting Germans. And they said, what? And he said, well, guys, you got to remember, you guys parachuting out over Britain, you're still an active combatant when you hit the ground. They're parachuting out over, their war is over, essentially. They're parachuting out over enemy territory on an island. So it was weird. There were these weird rules that carried over into World War II that they weren't rules like hard and fast, but they were philosophies. And people's positions on those philosophies were very, very fluid. Okay. I'm prepping myself for this next bit because it's just... Rawlings goes to see Lucienne. He figures out where she lives, and he goes to find her because he wants to explain to her, even though she doesn't speak English, he wants to explain to her that he was surprised to find out, and happily surprised, that she wasn't working at the brothel, that she was just a normal village girl.
Yeah.
He finds her. He finds out.
Rawlings. Yeah. Rawlings was happy. James Franco was really disappointed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Although, from what we know now about James Franco, that might or not have stopped him. But anyway, there's everything's an opportunity. He goes there. He starts through, his little book of French to try and learn a little bit about her. She's helping take care of, I guess, her nieces and nephews or something like that, or her cousins. It's something like that. I guess it's her cousins. And their parents, which was her aunt and uncle, or no, it was her brother and sister. So it would be her nieces and nephews. Her brother and his brother's wife were killed in a German bombing. And she shows him the wrecked house. And he's like, well, I think I've got an idea of how to cheer your niece and nephews up. Or your nieces and nephew up. Get ready for cringe, everyone. He thinks that they have some frame of reference to Texas rodeo tricks, which he's clearly not good at. And he puts on a display, and it once again reinforces that James Franco is not good at playing a regional individual from history, like meaning from a historical period. He's not based on anyone real, but they told him that he's a Texan from 1916 or whatever. And you're going, I don't think so.
Yep.
All the rest of the sequences in this film involving Lucienne play out the same way, minus the impromptu rodeo. It's Lucienne not speaking very good English and him not speaking French, and them having these clip sequences where they basically just, you're supposed to infer that they like each other because they're both young and cute or whatever, and that's about it. And then things get more ridiculous as the movie goes on. We'll get to that in a minute, but we're only going to tell you because there was no point in pulling any more clips from the Lucien subplot. It's just,
yep.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Lucien at this point, Tony, before we move on to the next bit? Not to put you on the spot. If you don't have any, we'll just ride right past that. Woohoo! We'll just,
no, as you said, there are several scenes, and they are exactly the same. It's the two of them trying to communicate. Where one doesn't speak English, the other one doesn't speak French.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to understand the storytelling catalyst that explains to the audience how these two fall in love.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally is, oh, she's not a hooker.
Yeah, yes, right.
That's all it hinges on. It's like, I was so glad to learn that you weren't a hooker.
Ah, très bien. Yeah. There's a great, for everybody watching, there is a great British miniseries from the 80s called Piece of Cake, which is all about the RAF pilots in the Battle of France and then ultimately in the Battle of Britain, which it's kind of a unique thing because it actually goes back all the way to the beginning of the Battle of France, which a lot of these stories don't do. And in that tale of these pilots with Hornet Squadron, they end up meeting, some of the characters end up meeting French girls in the village and forming relationships and things like that. That movie, or that miniseries, which is almost, no, it was 25 years old when this movie came out, handles all of that better than this movie does. And this movie was $60 million. I bet you they did the entire Piece of Cake miniseries for like 11 million. Maybe, probably less. It was probably less, probably like 5 million. And it does all of this so much better. So much better. We then have the second battle. There's another mission, and I believe it involves attacking German bombers, if I'm not mistaken. I might have that wrong. That was one of the nice parts about this movie, was seeing aircraft from World War I that generally don't get depicted in movies. They just kind of get ignored. There aren't a lot of World War I movies anyway, but like 1917, for example, is it's an army movie.
Yeah.
But I believe there is one or two occasions where you might see a biplane, if I recall.
But at the same time, like, I'm sure 1917 is a film that we will discuss at some point.
Oh yeah.
But that's the first World War I anything I can think of in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Cinema always tends to lean more towards World War II than it does World War I. But for me, not being the kind of aviation enthusiast that you are, I was watching this actually, and in my brain going, are they taking liberties with some of these aircraft, or did they actually exist? Like, and that's the fault of the movie itself. You can tell there's so much wrong with this film and its storytelling.
Right.
They could depict the most interesting looking tri-winged bomber. It could be 100% accurate to World War I, but as an audience member, you look at it and go, that's probably from someone's imagination.
Right.
And that really does the whole conflict a disservice, I feel.
The bombers in World War I are wacky, like imposingly wacky looking constructs, and yet they were very real. Like I'm saying that in a general sense. I mean, like, if you were to look at bomber technology of World War I, you would see some crazy photographs, like, of things that, we would never do nowadays in aviation. So yeah, I think a lot of these aircraft are accurately derived. It's just, are they accurately executed on is the question. So here's some footage from the second battle in the film.
fired enough to take down 6.
You ever think about trying to miss, Beagle? You might do better. I told you my gun's all screwy. Oh, really?
Beagle's still having problems hitting anything with his machine guns. And like you said, Tony, earlier, each combat sequence, of which there are surprisingly a lot of in this film, each one keeps pushing the envelope from the last one. So here they're attacking German bombers. Here you've got biplanes blowing up in midair, which I'm sure was possible with the right hits. Most biplanes went, you know, and went down, possibly on fire, but explosions like that, I don't know how common those were. I wasn't there. Okay. This was the battle where the guy with the crossed swords on his triplane, who did this.
Yep.
That guy has let James Franco live. That guy got behind James Franco. He could have shot him down. He pulled up next to him instead, saluted him, and flew off. Because James Franco was thinking, why did he just let me go? You know, what? Huh?
I'm still wondering why he let him go. But
they're at the flying club that night, and Cassidy provides the answer.
The reason I'm still alive is some German let me go on my gun jam. I don't know why the hell he did it.
Do you have 2 crossed swords on his plane? The triple ace. He did it because of what happened to Nunn. He won't let you off again.
I know there are famous stories in World War I and World War II of, you know, planes that were limping back home, and, you know, a German plane would come up and, you know, escort them to a certain distance and then let the bomber carry on one engine or whatever it was. These stories are very few and far between, though. That's why they're, you know, so shocking. Yeah. And it goes both ways. I mean, obviously, Allied planes are going to shoot down as many German planes as they can, or Japanese planes, depending on what conflict you're in. So while it is possible that this would occur, it is more likely to have occurred in World War I for sure, because World War I had more of a gentleman's conflict feel to it. It was a post-Victorian world. And so I grant it that. It's not outside the realm of possibility. And it's a nice little plot point. It gives the pilots, it gives the audience a little bit of extra business of understanding these pilots and the way they think and stuff like that. So I didn't want to ding the movie too hard on that. We saw a guy in the footage get shot in the neck. That's Jansen, the guy with the bride-to-be back home who wants to be a war hero. This rattles that character. He's already vomiting after coming back from other battles. He saw one of his friends get blown up in the first battle. He's rattled. And then I'm skipping ahead a little bit. Sorry. He's rattled. He's not happy about getting hit in the neck or this side, whatever it is. And he's kind of starting to fray at the edges. Meanwhile, the rich guy's son pulls Rawlings aside as they're coming back to the chateau because he's starting to suspect Beagle is a German spy.
There's something not right about Beagle, you know?
What do you mean?
I mean, he doesn't get any mail, right?
So?
Yeah, he never hits any of the Germans he shoots at.
No, a lot of guys don't have kills.
And now he's an expert on German aircraft. When did that happen?
I understand why nobody likes Beagle. I don't like Beagle. I often wish he wasn't in the movie. And when you see a few clips later on, you're going to go, yeah, okay, yeah, I wish he wasn't in the movie either.
Yep.
I did not grab any footage of this, Tony, but we might as well just bring Beagle's plot point on this all the way around. If you'd like to elaborate, I would love to hear your description of this.
Okay, so suspicions start to arise that he's potentially a spy. Although for some reason Rawlings just doesn't believe it. I don't know why. He probably thinks he's too dumb to be a spy. And yeah, and then the rich kid, he eventually goes to the officer. He goes to Jean Renault with some concerns, and they kind of look into his records, and then all of a sudden there's kind of an impromptu, I wouldn't really say sort of court scene, but they've got the squadron there, they've got Beagle there, they've got the officer, and they're like, hey, you've lied on your enlistment paperwork about your name. Your real name is a German name. You're from somewhere in the US that's got a large German contingent. We think you're a spy because you're going up in the planes. You're not shooting down any Germans. And then he comes up with a story explaining why I've been lying, because he's wanted in America for robbing a bank.
Mm-hmm.
They just, it's just...
Yeah, and he says, they're like, well, then how do we know you're not like a danger to us? And he's like, because I tried to rob the bank with a toy gun. And then everybody's like, well, can you prove that? And then suddenly Cassidy just comes up from behind everybody, and they're in the commander's officer's tent or whatever, commanding officer. And he's like, well, I've got this paperwork right here that I went to look for a few days ago, got it sent to me from so-and-so. And yes, there's nothing to worry about, sir. He's telling the truth. I've got it all right here. And I'm going, I sat up in my chair and I paused the movie and I'm going, if you had all those documents this whole time, why did you let this interrogation even get to this point in the tent? You should have known that they were going to ask this guy to come in. If you already had the answer to avoid all this, why didn't you? And my reaction to that, when he just like, it's almost like for the sake of the movie, we have to let this tense scene happen, but we also have to solve it real quick. So we're going to have the guy just with the turnkey solution in his back pocket for the end of the scene. And I'm just going,
this is thin, Riggs. This is very thin. This is anorexic.
I mean, it's
anorexic.
Yeah. So Beagle's not really a spy. Skinner then has this conversation, if we go back to when they think Beagle's a spy, because we just wanted to get you guys past that, just so you know.
Yeah.
Skinner is having a conversation with Rawlings about what's going to happen after the war, and if he thinks this airplane thing is going to take off as a technology. And Rawlings says this.
I hear they might use planes to deliver mail from city to city.
Really? I figure as long as I'm up in the air, they can't see me. They won't mind if I'm black.
Now, Skinner in real life was Eugene Bullard, and he was a boxer who then joined the French army, he was from America, he was born in Georgia, but then he became a boxer in Paris, joined the French army, then joined the Lafayette Escadrille, fought in the conflict, stayed in Paris for a long time. I can't remember what he did between the wars. Then he joined the French army again during the invasion of France in 1940. And it was only after he realized that the Nazi party, when they found a guy like him, they were going to truly not POW him. They were going to execute him right there on the spot. He ran and he made his way into Spain. So he got into Spain, went back to the United States, and found himself in a segregated society. So it was this kind of like, the man just couldn't get a break like his whole life. But he never did become like a mail carrier or anything like that.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Now, this next bit is where they're called out into the hallway right after they're talking because they found Jansen in the hallway.
Yep, perfect.
Jansen, you're going through a little shock. Now don't think about flying for a while. You don't have to go up again until you're ready. You understand me?
All right, Tony, I sense you have something you'd like to say. So.
Yeah, so for me, even more so than the ridiculous spy subplot for me, is this. So, you know, shell shock is very real. Today, we know it as post-traumatic stress. In World War One, even then, it wasn't called shell shock. It was referred to as a person lacking in moral fiber.
Right.
I think the way Cassidy comes over and gives him the slap, probably realistic, but then going, it's okay, you don't have to fly for a while. And he doesn't fly again for ages.
Yeah.
That's
It's a
not what
long
happened
time.
in World War II.
Right.
If you couldn't go and fight because you were a coward, you'd be shot.
Right. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the whole movie Paths of Glory is about shooting your own men for turning and running away from an impregnable position. You know? Yeah. It's a pretty weird scene. It's very lopsided, both emotionally and historically, from historical accuracy perspective. However, I sit back and I go, historical advisor was a convicted felon. I'm going to keep coming back to that because it's too funny. The guy actually claimed on his resume that he was a historical advisor on Band of Brothers and Private Ryan as part of a way to get this job. And he even said he was the curator of the Imperial War Museum. Like, no one wants to check up on those references? Like, really? So,
not Dean Devlin.
Yeah, no. I could almost get there with this if Cassidy is such an experienced squadron leader that he knows that guys like him by now are a danger to the entire squadron. And so he orders him not to fly. I could get there, but like you said, the dialogue makes it a suggestion rather than a mandate.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better if he's like, I'm ordering you, not you are not allowed to go into the air until we get you sorted out. Because you know, but they didn't do that. They used this other method. Yeah. Okay. Now we come to a bit that I don't even know how to get my head around it. Beagle on their third shown battle. At this point, the implication is that they've been in a number of battles. They've been let into the Flying Club, obviously, because they've shot down planes. They've been in combat. The Flying Club guys accept them now. Beagle still hasn't shot down anything, and they go into this next conflict or this next mission. And Beagle, you know where we're going, right? Oh, it's good, right? So Beagle gets shot down, and his plane is like, and he glides it like a moron over an active trench combat area, like the trench warfare area. He over the enemy, you know, the combat line, the whatever you want to call it, the front line.
Yeah.
He literally,
he crashes in no man's land.
No man's land.
The Germans in the trenches, and which I want to point out, you don't see very much of in the entire film.
No,
they're flying around over this beautiful countryside, and you're like, is there actually a war going on down there? Like,
yeah.
There is a couple of scenes that show it, but not many.
Sure. And I went and looked up some of that from a general World War I perspective, and apparently trenches that were fought over where there wasn't a lot of progress throughout the war, it could literally look like up until 100 yards before the trench, it's still just pristine farmland that's just being worked. I mean, very weird. The World War I, as you know, was very weird. It was just a very tragic, bizarre war. But yeah, who would be stupid enough to drop down into no man's land? He lands the plane, sort of, and then the plane ground loops. There's a lot to unpack from this, but I'm just going to play the clip first, and then we'll discuss.
Can you move? No, something's been in my hand.
Okay, so we have a guy who's already been proven to be stupid, and he does another stupid thing by landing in no man's land, crashing. But then James Franco decides to land his plane in the nearest field and go running into a kill zone to get arguably the worst pilot in the squadron out of there, when there are French soldiers that it's their job to try and get in there and do what they need to do. And what I don't understand, Tony, I cannot figure out the physics of this. How does a guy who is shown still in the pilot seat because he's got his seatbelt on when the plane goes upside down, how does he get out of the plane and suddenly his arm is trapped underneath the plane? The plane is also made of wood and canvas, by the way. These planes could be pushed around on the airfield, airstrips with your bare hands. Like, what? Am I off base here? Like,
look, Michael, when I started complaining on social media about the rise of Skywalker, half of my generation told me that I was overthinking it. And that's exactly what you're doing right here. Did you not switch your brain off?
I don't know how to do that.
So, obviously, I understand you've had to trim these clips to avoid copyrights.
Yeah.
So after he crashed land, I don't know. I was wondering the same thing. It's like you're strapped into the cockpit with a seatbelt.
Uh-huh.
But then by the time James Franco arrives, your arm is wedged under the wing.
Uh-huh.
Which is canvas and wood.
Right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could lift. Anyway, oh dear, I've done it again. My camera doesn't want to work now. Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll give it a second. I'll read this super chat. Ryan, thank you for the super chat. He says, this whole film is like a G.I. Joe episode featuring shipwreck. Yeah, that's not a bad analogy, Ryan. That's really not a bad analogy. Just gonna get up here in this biplane and give the Kaiser what for. Yeah, I agree, Wolfie. Lawrence is my favorite World War I movie as well. Absolutely right. And then Jeff says, this movie certainly is chewing gum for the brain. That is true. So I'm sorry.
I'm gonna have to jump out of StreamYard and jump back in again.
Whatever you'd like to do, sir. Whatever you'd like to do. I'll be right. Yeah. I'll be right here.
Okay.
Zantara says, I was accused of overthinking the garbage that is Free Guy. It irked me to hear that. Yeah, there's no such thing as using your brain too much. I mean, if you want to admit that you turn your brain off for certain things, great. And you can only use your brain to the level that you have the knowledge of. So, like, for example, when we were watching, Melinda and I were watching the Peacemaker series last week, I was loving it, but I also admitted that with Peacemaker, I don't really know anything about the comic book accurate ancillary characters. I know the main Justice League characters basically, but I'm not really a DC person. So I was able to just kind of enjoy it to the extent my brain understood it. Yeah, I agree with you, Zantara, for sure. George Aiken says, if Vin Diesel was in this film, the plane would be faster than a Spitfire and have more guns. That's true. Triple X, World War I edition. Yep, that is true. That is true. This movie certainly is. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go back up here while we're waiting on Tony to come back. If you're talking about the Wolfie, if you're talking about the history advisor, you're probably not far off. Yeah, Paths of Glory, Lewis, is a stark, tough movie to watch for sure. That is a really tough movie to watch, in a good way, in a very good way. So let's see. Jason says, Paths of Glory. Now there's an upbeat, inspirational film that really gets you all fired up to go to war. Yeah, the rules in the different armies in World War I were very strange. They were very, very strange. I don't see Tony, so I'm just going to shoot him a message real quick. You okay? Might be having internet problems. If so, the show must go on, and I shall go on with it. But let's just give him another minute, people. Oh, I see something. Wow.
Okay, I'm just going to do
happened?
this because my other camera just stopped working. I don't know what.
Oh, okay. Well, your other camera's doing real well. It looks real nice.
Good.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
You know, this happened last week on the 3POA. I've got to sort this out.
Isn't that a new camera?
Oh, it's not the camera. I think it's not the cable, the way I connected into my laptop. But
Okay. Well, I'm just glad to see you again. Glad that you're here. Always glad to see you, sir. And as Jason says, dynamic angle, Tony. You look good. Yeah.
Well, I remember where I was because this is the part that I was most excited to actually talk about.
Okay. Yep. Go for it.
So, Beagle's crash landed in the middle of no man's land.
Mm-hmm.
Then James Franco decides he's going to land his plane and run in and save him. But we get a brief moment so we don't actually see him land. You just see his plane go down behind some trees. And then all of a sudden, Rawlins is on the top of a hill looking straight down into the trenches. And I'm thinking, why don't the French send some snipers up there and just pick off all the Germans? It's trench warfare. You've got a big hill next to you.
Yeah.
And so he runs down. He's trying to rescue Beagle, who's got his hand trapped, and he can't get him out. Two French soldiers decide, hang on, we're going to leave the trench and we're going to go help them. So this idiot pilot, who is totally obnoxious and doesn't do anything, gets two more French soldiers killed pretty quickly. They actually achieve nothing. They just die.
Right.
And I can't imagine them actually doing that, An American pilot out there. Let's run into German machine gun fire.
Nah.
Then we get Rawlins turns around to one of the dead French soldiers and sees that he has his entrenching tool on his belt equipment. He removes the entrenching tool, tries to use that as leverage to get the wing of the plane up and get Beagle's hand out. That still doesn't work. So when did James Franco make the film 27 Hours, where he played that real life kind of rock climbing guy who had to cut off his own arm? I don't know. I should have looked it up. So there's this whole film that is based around the true life story of an adventurer guy who falls into a canyon, gets his arm wedged between the canyon wall and a rock, and he's in there for 27 hours, and he eventually hacks off his own arm with a penknife. Well, in this, he's sorry, Beagle, and he just lops off his arm with an entrenching tool.
Right. I mean, I've been told that, back in the day, and possibly even now, I'm not sure, but I know back in the day, they were trained to remember that their entrenching tool could be used as a defensive weapon. Like that, if you were down to nothing, you could use it. Like you could, but I don't recall it being surgically sharp enough to lop off an arm. Like, I don't know if is it doable? Maybe. I don't know.
Like if you swang with all your might, you would cut the arm open, you would fracture the wrist, but completely sever it.
Yeah.
He's probably got to hit that thing, a dozen times to get all the way through.
Yeah. And
to get a hand out from the wings are made of wood and canvas.
Why
didn't he hit the wing and
hit the wing? Wood? Yeah. It baffles the mind. Like you're literally stuck under a kite.
Yeah.
The heaviest part is way, way, way over there on the engine side, where it's not really affecting wing distribution. The wings are the lightest part of the plane.
Yep.
And the one French guy was able to lift it just enough that he should have been able to before he got shot, that he should have been able to pull his hand out, but he couldn't because reasons. And I'm going, you know, I feel like John Travolta in that meme. I'm just like, huh? Like, what? You know, crazy. Bobby Collins. I made a snap decision.
Bobby.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a bridge too far in suspension of disbelief. It was like, oh, this is just a contrived way so this guy won't have a hand. Because we know he's not going to be gone from the movie, because I know Dean Devlin, like, he's going to make it a thing. It's going to, I wish I was wrong, but he's not gone from the movie. So,
nope.
Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
No, I was exactly this. I mean, I got pulled out of the realism of this film with the CGI lion 5 minutes in.
Right.
At this point, I was like, I actually think it was after that scene where not only has he just had his hand severed in one foul swoop with an entrenching tool, but he then just gets up and runs back into the trench. Like he's not in shock. He doesn't need to be carried.
Right.
Or anything. And I actually, they get back into the trench, and then all of a sudden it just cuts to another scene. I don't remember what scene. And I'm thinking, well, how did they get out of the trench? How did James Franco get his plane back? I need to pause this movie and watch the rest tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
And I literally had to stop it and go, okay, you need 12 hours off this film and come back.
Yeah, your brain was full. Your brain was like, nope, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I can tell you what scene that they jumped to, because in the battle where Beagle goes down, for everyone listening, in that same battle, Eugene Skinner, the black boxer guy, he saves the life of the rich man's son, who initially didn't want to billet with him. Because, you know, he's like this rich sort of prejudiced guy. Now, this guy otherwise in the film, aside from that one moment, this guy really hasn't been that much of a snob or a jerk. He's just been one of the other guys. But for that one moment early on where they set that up, so Skinner saves his life in the battle by shooting down a plane that was on his tail. And then he shows up that night in the chateau to Skinner's, I don't know if it's Skinner's room, but it's a room with a fireplace. They're relaxing. And he has a bottle of Louis XV bourbon that he stole from his dad before he left for France, from his, you know, hoity-toity liquor cabinet. And the scene plays briefly as this.
Would you care to share a glass with me?
Just because I saved your life?
No. No, it's because I've been a pompous ass.
Pour me a glass.
What does your father do?
My daddy was a slave.
I mean, the guy that plays Skinner is a really good actor. I mean, he is a good actor. I like the guy.
He's the, well, him and obviously Jean Reno is just they're the two best things in this whole film
by far. By far.
Yeah, which I don't know how much of a compliment that is when you're comparing them to the actress who played Lucienne and then James Franco,
right.
who I'm sure was stoned in some of these scenes.
Yeah, and talk about an actress given a thankless role. She was literally plucked out of French theater and told to, you know, we'd like to hire a French girl for this movie, and I don't even know if she actually did speak English. It's very possible she didn't. And you know, you're going, this role is thankless. I mean, there's nothing here. We might as well just move that part of the story along for a minute, because I don't remember exactly when these bits happened, but there comes a follow-up scene where James Franco shows up in a British airplane for some reason, because they needed a plane with 2 seats. So he shows up in a British airplane. I think it's a Bristol. It might be something else. Don't jump me. It's a British biplane, but it's got 2 seats. He shows up in it in the middle of the day and takes her for a flight. She's never been in an airplane before. So they pull a Pearl Harbor where, Josh Hartnett takes Kate Beckinsale up in a plane. But what's weird about this is later on in the film, he then uses the airplane again to go get her and her nieces and nephew when he finds out that the Germans are advancing on the town of Reims. And he knows that she lives near there and he's got to get her out, even though all the people are leaving anyway in a big caravan. At that point, Jean Reno yells at him that he cannot use military airplanes for non-military purposes. He tells him, screw you, I'm going to go back, or whatever he says. I think he says, yes, sir, and then flies off anyway, or something like that. But you go, okay, oh, that's always good to know. That's great. Thanks. All right. Well, I'll fix it.
It was on before, but
yeah, no problem.
Just check it.
Yeah, no problem. That was Melinda passing me a little note. I feel like I'm on a late show where they're passing me, an envelope. So I don't know how he got permission at this part of the movie to use the plane and not get in trouble. When he gets in trouble for using the plane without permission the next time. So that's just one little bit that weirded me out. But also the fact that the scenes between him and Lucienne are still the same. It's like she can't speak English. He can't speak French. Yeah. They're cute with one another, blah, blah, blah. She has like a little dialogue scene where she says, I really can't like you. I shouldn't like you because what if you get killed? This is not, it's all just flotsam and fluff, guys. There's no agency to any of it.
No.
None at all. So let me just go ahead and fix this because Melinda has told me that there's something weird going on with the YouTube settings, which is always, she turned it on. Okay. That's weird. It's on now. All right. So it was off before. All right, fine. Fair enough. That's going to be that weird moment that I wish I could cut out from this episode, but I can't. So whatever.
Look, if that's all that we're doing wrong between my technical mishaps and this, we're actually doing a lot better than Flyboys. So,
yeah, for real.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they have this moment. I want to go back to one thing real quick. The part where he says, my dad was a slave. I remember kind of going like, I'm not good at math. And I certainly wasn't good at math in 2006. I've never been good at maths. But I was like, I went and looked it up this time because it still rang weird. I was like, huh? It turns out that Eugene Bullard's father was born in 1863 or something like that. And he was born onto a plantation that was slave driven. It was, but he was a child. His father, which would have been Bullard's grandfather, was a slave. But he was not. So while certainly he probably didn't have an easy go of it in Georgia in the 1870s and 80s, we're not even going to, mince words there. Just everybody know that math, I think that math got fudged because people thought it was like a punchline to the conversation where they thought they couldn't resist temptation because this was all about this guy who had this rich dad who was all about his business and all this kind of stuff. And it would be the question to ask, what does your dad do? And they wanted some line probably that shut the conversation down. Or anyway, mathematically, it's just not possible. So just know that. Then we have the scene where James Franco, he's upset by the fact that he's had to cut his friend's hand off with an entrenching tool. And he goes into the flying club after hours to get himself a stiff drink. And Cassidy is in there because Cassidy is also the other haunted ace of the group who, is still working through his demons. And I've had to cut this conversation down a bit, but this is some of that stuff that we talked about in Hurt Locker, where you've got Falcon, Anthony Mackie. You got Falcon talking to Hawkeye and talking about how war is this horrible thing, and we're all just fodder for the meat grinder, and so we have to have a conversation like that in this movie as well, which is meta for the audience. It's a total meta moment. So here we go.
Meanwhile, Beagle goes through life without a hand.
He volunteered for this war. He knew what he was getting into. I don't care what happened in the past. You can't let that affect you. You gotta forget about it. Otherwise, you're a danger to yourself and everyone else up there. Now you realize this war ain't gonna be won by either side. Someday it'll just end. And everyone will go home, get on with their lives. Tall grass will cover the battlefield. And all the pilots we've lost wouldn't have changed a damn thing.
So he becomes this Ernest Hemingway in that moment and just starts, staring off into the middle distance. And I know that a lot of war films have these scenes in them. I know they do. So I'm not saying that Flyboys is unique in this respect. However, good war films have to earn these moments. The best war films don't have them. Good war films at least earn that moment. Yeah. This film is not a good war film. So it didn't earn this moment and then dumped that moment into the swamp that is this script. Yeah. Any thoughts, Tony? Any thoughts?
I'd given up by this point.
Yeah.
I do remember thinking, listening to him, and he's like, no one's going to win. Eventually, this war, it'll just end, and grass will grow over the battlefield. And I'm thinking, how did he know that?
Yeah.
He's giving of some sort now.
He's giving the audience a history lesson. He's now the history teacher for the audience. Cromer, I just want to let you know that we don't choose movies because they're bad. We were trying to choose them for variety. Now I can check your challenge, and you can settle in for a Kingdom of Heaven review on the next go around if you want. I mean, I don't want to decide now, but I'm just saying we can certainly step up and meet your challenge if you want us to talk about a film that's really, really good. Sometimes we just try to. Sorry, Tony. Go ahead.
I did actually have a film in mind.
Okay.
For the next episode, and the reason I would really like to discuss this particular film is because I'm almost embarrassed to say that I've never actually seen it.
Okay.
For the next episode, Michael, would you like to discuss Bridge Over the River Kwai?
I would love that.
Because I've never seen that film, and I've been to the Bridge Over the River Kwai 3 times in my life.
Holy cow. Oh, yeah, we got to do that one. We have to do that movie. Yeah, I would love that. Oh, do you need a copy?
I've got a copy.
Okay.
Not in my hands, so I purchased it in the hopes that you would agree to.
That.
So.
Totally. Yes, absolutely. That's a done deal. So the next film, guys, is Bridge on the River. Bridge. Is it over the River Kwai or on the River Kwai? I think it's
on Bridge on the River Kwai.
Yeah. We will be doing Bridge on the River Kwai next War Stories, everyone. But first, we have to get through this plane crash. So back to the film. We go into our, I want to say this is, what is this, the 4th fight? It could be or the 3rd. I can't keep them straight. It's either the 3rd or the 4th battle.
Oh, and the 12th, maybe?
Yeah. This time, this time, though, you'll remember this one, Tony. They have to go up against a Zeppelin. And this is where Cassidy shows that he is the quadruple ace or whatever he is of the Lafayette Escadrille. He's basically like, in Dean Devlin terms of reality, it was almost as if they took him and his plane into a computer simulation for a PC and just typed in the God mode code, and suddenly he's just ripping through everybody. All right. But I want to make sure that that you all understand out there, I'm about to show you footage that's going to run counter to what happens next. It's going to be the biggest logic trap since somebody getting their hand cut off with an entrenching tool. Okay, here we go. So this is the Zeppelin fight, and you will see Cassidy fighting with his God mode code. All right, here we go. Okay, so if this was like a steampunk movie, which I'm not that into steampunk, but let's just say it was a biplane steampunk movie or whatever, I'd be like, all right, this is some really cool action-y stuff. I couldn't really find a lot of evidence to suggest that the second thing where you scrape the guy's wing off with your landing struts, I couldn't find any evidence that that was actually a tactic. The other move may very well have been an aviation move. I don't know, to quickly get behind somebody. I don't know. But that move, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. So I know the wings on the planes are quite weak, but as a pilot, would you not be concerned that you would lose your landing gear?
Yeah, right. Especially when you've got a plane that's made out of canvas and wood. Like I just don't think that cool visuals, whatever. But then it makes even less sense, because then within seconds of this, the Black Falcon shows up, and the Black Falcon and him square off for their final confrontation. And even though we've just seen him do all of these smart things to stay alive and being relieved that his buddies came in and shot down the two planes behind him, he just decides to play chicken with Black Falcon and just scream and open up his machine guns. And of course, he gets riddled with bullets, and now he's dying. And Black Falcon is gloating about it. And so he does. And then Timothy Dalton blows up in a jetpack, and it's a whole thing, and it's just like, yeah. Why would a guy who was skilled beyond realism just a second ago suddenly do something as just contrived and emotionally stupid as playing chicken and screaming and going full bore at this guy? Because he just said in the scene right before that, which we didn't have a clip from, that his whole purpose of still being there, because he was taking on extra missions and all that kind of stuff, he could have gone home a long time ago. He told James Franco, the only reason that I'm still hanging around here is to make sure that you guys stay alive, as many of you as you can, because I couldn't save my friends. Yep. And then literally in the next battle, he sacrifices himself in an act of epic moronicness. Like, I don't even know if that's a word. I don't even care anymore. I don't care. Like, okay. Well,
so then we cut to a funeral scene, or not a funeral scene.
A memorial,
like a commemoration type service.
Yeah,
memorial. Yeah, there's some. There's a couple of reefs on the plane and the French officer and all. And Rawlins is,
Ra. Good one, Ra.
Rawlins is he's the only guy kind of in the crowd there who is, he's head in his hands, he's absolutely distraught, he's crying. And then the officer's like, because Cassidy's a prophet, he knew how the World War I was going to end. So a couple of days before he commits seppuku, or he goes Japanese kamikaze before it was a thing, into the Zeppelin. He wrote a couple of days before a letter because he knew he was going to die. And Rawlins, who 1 minute is distraught, just sort of gets up, walks out the front, and reads out this letter. And I was like, this acting is so bad.
Yeah. I'm going to read this letter from Cassidy, and I mean the accent that he puts on is through those squinty eyes and just the flat mouth. I mean, he's not. I don't know what he's trying to do. I don't know what he's trying to do, but it's not working. It's not working. Okay. Final battle. Oh, before I forget the final battle, I should probably mention, in his attempt to get Lucienne out of her farmhouse by stealing the airplane, Lucienne is shot by a German soldier through the shoulder while he's taking the plane off. He gets her to the airfield hospital. They patch her up. She lives, but she's taken to the hospital in the nearby town or city or whatever. He goes to see her because now the Germans have advanced to the point where they have to evacuate that city. And he finds her just leaving that. This is several weeks later. He finds her leaving the hospital. And she says, "We are going to England where we're safe. And then hopefully after the war, you and I can be together in Paris." And he says, "Great." And she's like, "You'll be here in my heart, but I won't be here to count the planes for you." Like there's like there's this one little bitty moment in the movie where she's counting the planes coming back from a mission.
Yeah, and how he would understand that, because he didn't watch her do that. He was in one of the planes.
Right. Right. She
Yeah.
never tells him that she does. At least if I recall, I could have forgotten because I zoned out a few times.
Me too.
So he says, "Okay, yeah, well, we'll be together in Paris." Keep that in your mind, everybody. We'll be together in Paris. But we're going to England. They're going to England first, which you also need to keep in mind, because I don't think Rollins listened to that very well either. Now they've got their final mission. Their final mission is they're going to blow up an ammo dump. They're going to escort some bombers to blow up an ammo dump. And when they do, they get jumped once again by Black Falcon and his squadron of guys. Now, at some point in this confrontation, I think it was in the last battle. In the last battle, James Franco killed the guy with the crossed swords. At some point, I can't remember which battle. It was a while ago. It was literally right after, it was one of the battles right after the guy spared his life. He ended up having to kill the guy with crossed swords from killing another dude. So that guy's dead, everyone. Okay, so there's a conversation that he has with Jensen at some point, the guy who has the bride-to-be back home, who is in shock and can't fly. And Jensen's asking him, "How do you do it? How do you guys keep going up there and flying? I'm from a military family of like several generations, and I can't do it. And the only way I can, keep the voices out of my head and keep my nerves under control is through drinking, And he's got like his sipping whiskey or whatever. And James Franco is just like, "Why don't you go sleep it off?" Like, which may be very well accurate to World War I, I'm sure, where they're just like, "You know what? Why don't you just go sleep that off? There's no psychological help. Just go sleep it off." So he's kind of ignored. James Franco is now in charge of the squadron. They all go back up for this one mission. And that's when everything kind of starts to fall apart. Not because of James Franco being incompetent as a character, but more because the writers realize they have to start wrapping up some of this stuff. And so some of these things happen. And we'll talk about them after they play.
What's that? I rigged this up in the machine shop. I can fly with it. Tested it out yesterday.
I don't know what the writers are trying to tell us here, that this completely incompetent pilot who can't hit anything suddenly became a total badass after he had his arm cut off.
Yeah.
So,
and also, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, and also, who was the writer who is the big enough idiot to say, this line, "Beware the hook," that'll totally play. We should totally do that. It's going to be the coolest moment ever. And it's like, I don't know if it was a lack of common sense. That's part of it. Lack of good writing chops, part of it. Overconfidence in the actor, definitely part of it. But all those things combined to create the biggest cringeworthy moment in this whole movie. And that's hard to beat because we already had the impromptu rodeo, which was really bad. We've had a few other moments like that, but this one, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they had that line. There, we know that guys like Douglas Bader flew with artificial limbs and things like that. The rules were fast and loose back then, in World War I and World War II. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that there might have been some guy missing a hand that flew airplanes in World War I. It's very, very possible. They probably didn't even know that much about depth perception back then. There might have been guys flying with one eye. I don't know. But my point in saying that is that if you have a guy flying with 2 artificial legs, I can get there that you might have a guy flying with one hand as a hook. But the whole thing is played for cheese. The whole thing is so cheesy.
I think the filmmakers were going for that, the goosebump moment, and just completely failed in their attempts.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I'm trying to think of a good example in another film. Okay, look, love the movie or hate it. I do remember the first time watching Braveheart when Mel Gibson is delivering his speech to the Scotsman the first time they go up against the English. And at the very last bit, and he's like, but they'll never take our freedom. And he runs off, you know.
Right.
The first time I saw that gave me goosebumps in the cinema. And I'm like,
sure,
that's what they were going for.
Yeah.
But they delivered a really wet fart.
Yes. Yes. Ryan, thank you for the super chat. He says, don't viewers always equate Zeppelin to the Hindenburg and Nazis, i.e. Last Crusade Rocket Man? Yeah, probably in pop culture, but Zeppelins were around in World War I first. They were definitely a World War I thing. And I got to read some of these. Bobby Collins says, that's my new catchphrase, boys. And then Jason Anderson says, I would have paid money for him to yell bangarang. Yeah. And then KBA says, God, I've got whiplash from that rapid shift in tone. Yeah. George Aiken, who's flying these planes? Frat boys or air pirates? Yeah.
KBA with the whiplash there. If you experience that whiplash from the shift in tone just from the clips Michael's showing, imagine sitting through 2 hours, because this is like the 2 hour mark.
Right.
Although it feels like you've been watching 5 hours of movie.
Yes. Oh,
and
Tony.
then you get that. But we've got one more thing to top it, haven't we?
We do.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because I've only seen it the once. But the squadron returns back to the airfield. Cassidy is now Kamikaze Cassidy, we'll call him.
The rich kid killed him. The rich kid killed himself, as we saw.
Rich kid killed himself. Kamikaze Cassidy destroyed the Zeppelin. So the rest of the squadron get back to the airfield, and then Rawlings is very much like, right, I'm going to do the Cassidy thing now. Another belt of ammo, refuel the plane, goes back out on his own.
Yep.
And he knows where the German airfield is, and he can get there and attacks the German airfield, and then basically ends up in a dogfight with
Black Falcon.
Black Falcon.
I can show the clips to support what you're saying, and then I've got the one clip isolated. I know where you're going. I've got the one. So we're gonna show you this moment here, and then we'll unpack it, and then Tony will keep talking. All right, here we go. It just keeps getting worse. Okay, so
but they're not done yet.
They're not done yet. But wait, there's more. So James Franco does the World War I equivalent of nah, 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 to get the guys back in the air. Black Falcon takes the challenge. He goes back up. They fight. Black Falcon and him are going round and round. And then suddenly these two other planes, these German planes, show up and hit Franco's lower machine gun. So now he's really crippled. He's handicapped as far as being a combatant. He thinks he's finished because now he's 3 versus 1. And that's when Jensen shows up. He's gotten over his shell shock. And he shows up with his big lantern jaw yelling, "Knights of the Air!" And he's flying in. And I'm like, wow. Like he almost, his face, the way it opens up in that shot, he reminds me of the Stan from American Dad. Like with that big jaw, it's another
so if they made a sequel to this film, which I'm sure they'll never do, but if let's say they did, right? Would it be called Flyboys 2 Knights of the Air, or would it be Flyboys 2 Beware the Hook?
Oh, both are good options, and both are straight to the bottom of the barrel on Amazon Prime. Like straight, those movies that Amazon Prime picked up for $1 that they just have in their library. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, they wouldn't even cast James Franco. They would get his cheaper brother.
Right.
And Jean Reno would be replaced with Steven Seagal.
Yes. Playing a Frenchman. Yeah.
Yes. An overweight Frenchman.
Yeah.
With a hairpiece.
You got to get back up there in that plane. You just got to get back up there. And now we come to the moment I think that Tony and I have both been waiting for. James Franco is shot because his plane is still crippled in its armaments. It's been hit. He can't use his lower machine gun.
He takes a round through the shoulder, I think. Yeah.
Takes a round through the shoulder, and he resigns himself, so we think, to being finished. And the Black Falcon pulls up next to him, and he looks over at him all sullen, like, "Yeah, you got me." And Black Falcon's like, "Ha ha ha." And so then he pulls back around to get behind him to kill him off. And then this occurs.
Cow punchers coming over now?
Yeah, I done some cowboying.
You think a 6-shooter's gonna help you up there?
Well, whatever you were using didn't seem to do you much good.
I put that moment in there to remind people that at the very beginning, as bad as and unbelievable as it is, they actually seeded that in the beginning and then paid it off, which I didn't notice when I saw it in the theater. I only noticed it on this rewatch. Yes, everyone. He tricks him, flips his plane back over to the side by side, and shoots him with his revolver, his 6-shooter, in the head. And that's how he kills Black Falcon, which then pays off the whole line at the beginning where Cassidy's making fun of him for being the newbie from Texas, where 6-shooters aren't useful. If this was any other movie, that would be really smart writing. But here, in a historical context, I looked it up, everybody. Like, I went and looked up. There's only one documented example of a pilot with a sidearm taking down another airplane. And it's a pilot in the Pacific in World War II who was already in a parachute. And he shot down a Japanese fighter plane with a 1911. That is the only documented example of this happening. Now, in World War I, at the beginning of the war, early aviation, they did not have machine guns mounted on the wings to fire forward. A lot of times they would have an observer with a rifle who could sort of move. It wasn't a turret. He just had a rifle. Yeah. And he would shoot out the sides of the plane. But I don't think their hit ratio nor their kill ratio was anything to write home about. The only documented example of a pilot-to-pilot kill with a sidearm was in the Pacific Theater in World War II. And that other pilot wasn't even in a plane. So...
it's just, this is when it goes fast and furious.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And as Bobby Collins says, that was some quick trigonometry. I mean, he's like, he was aiming right at him, but they were both in motion. Yeah. It's something else. Oh, and Master Son is here. He says, I'll say it. This movie was hot garbage.
Yeah. I'm loving some of the titles for the sequel that people are popping up in the chat. We've got George Aitken here saying Flyboys 2, Party to Berlin. Flyboys 2, Fly Harder.
Oh, yeah. Flyboys 2, I still can't speak French. Dear God, why? Flyboys 2, Revenge of the Black Falcon. Fly Girls 2016. Oh, that's hilarious. Ghostbusters reference. That's good. Flyboys 2, Grounded for Life. Flyboys 2, How the Hell Did This Happen? Flyboys 2, The Baron Strikes Back. 2 Fly 2 Boys, Fly Harder. Flyboys 2, Party to Berlin. Oh, Carl says, Knights of the Air. I'm going to make a t-shirt. Then Bobby Collins says, he's never played TIE Fighter on DOS. Let's see. Oh, man, that's good. Dear God, this thing is over 2 hours. Oh, yeah. The movie is a smidge over 2 hours. Yeah.
2 hours 20. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Flyboys 2, You Only Fly Twice. Fly Men. That's a good one. Flyboys 2, Hot Buttered Garbage. Now, this is when Hook Solo needed to shout, great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million. Look, Master Son, this is not the only one we're going to pick. This is not, we just picked this one to move theaters of war. We just wanted to do a different war. So I picked World War I landed on this movie. Look, you can blame me all you want. There will be more films about aviation in the future. Most of them will be better than this. I assure you. I promise. And yes, Douglas, I'd be happy to do Waterloo. We would be happy to do Waterloo at some point. Scott Hughes, Flyboys 2, Electric Boogaloo. I need to point out that this is the end of the film. They all kind of line up after this to escort James Franco home. And then it's just a rolling list of title cards with the characters next to them. Now, all these characters are fictional pastiches. So none of these title cards have any real weight to them because they're not real. So
for me watching this, I don't remember seeing any title card at the start of this film saying, you know, very, very loosely based on a true. I didn't remember seeing any of that. Mm-hmm. So when I got to the end of the film and these title cards started coming up, I was like, don't tell me this is loosely based on.
In the beginning, it says inspired by the true story.
Okay.
It's about as inspired by the true story. And I again, this is a better film I'm about to mention, but I have my issues with it. This is as inspired a true story as Memphis Belle was, which means not much at all. So, you know, and when guys, when they show the title cards, they literally have one of Lucienne, and it's like it says Rawlings went to Paris and looked for Lucienne, but never found her again. So he went back to Texas and bought the biggest ranch in the state. The end.
And I was like, that was perfect. I was like, of this 2 hour and 20-minute runtime, I think I've spent 45 minutes watching those two try and communicate.
Yeah.
And I said, this is what I meant earlier. It goes nowhere. You get this final title card, and it's like, and he never finds her.
Yeah. And it's so bad. Like the guy with the hook hand starts a flying circus.
Yeah.
And the Jensen guy goes home a hero after serving out the rest of the war and all this stuff. And the black boxer guy, he goes back home and starts flying for the U.S. mail, which totally didn't happen. Like that wasn't a thing. They just made it up at the end. They just made it all up. And it's like, well, this don't make no sense. This is a disappointing movie, and I think what makes it so disappointing is the fact that they were able to pull this much money together for a World War I aviation film in 2006, and they wasted it on a script like this. I think that's the biggest letdown. It's that missed opportunity. You know, you could have made something that was on a level like 1917. You could have made something with that amount of money back then that could have been like that, and you went in the Party of Five direction. You went in the, you know, the CW direction with it in some ways. I mean, it's not totally CW, but it's not totally, you know, young people TV, but it's close enough where you go, I don't know. Fun footnote, everyone. The Flyboys influence doesn't end here. There is one more vestige of this movie that showed up in another James Franco film called This Is the End with Seth Rogen. And I have a little bit here to show you.
A functioning revolver from the movie Flyboys.
Old Faithful. Jesus. Thing's real. No, I kept this from the movie. This is the actual revolver.
I see. Yeah. Franco, that's very uncomfortable.
I always keep my props.
That's really cool.
Always keep my props. I know how to handle it.
It's got a big cardboard standee from Flyboys in his basement, and that revolver becomes a thing. It's weird how that movie came back around in that other movie a few years later, and you're going, wow. Obviously James Franco is playing a fictional version of himself, as they all are. But yeah, Flyboys, but for that This Is the End movie, Flyboys is all but forgotten. I think it made a pittance of its budget. I think it was like less than 1/6 of its budget back at the box office. It was a disaster. Part of it is due to the fact that the movie isn't totally incompetently produced. It's just a very bad script. And when you have a very bad script or a mediocre script, and you're trying to sell people on a historical thing that goes all the way back to World War I, that's a bad combo. People are automatically not interested in anything. World War II is becoming a hard enough sell. Imagine trying to go back to World War I and having a bad script. Forget it. You're sunk. So, yeah.
I'm a little bit worried that RetroBlasting will potentially get a copyright strike here because the producers of that film lost so much money.
Mm-hmm.
They need the $50 in super chat that you made today, Michael, because that was more than what this film made domestically.
Well, I think for sure. I think for sure that super chat total, which thank you everybody for always supporting War Stories. We love doing this show. That super chat total in the amount of time that we've done it is probably more than that movie made in the same amount of time. Yeah, it's I just see it as such a, well, again, this. What did we just say? World War II films are always a hard sell these days, and when you don't have a good script, and Red Tails did not have a good script. Tuskegee Airmen with Lawrence Fishburne is a much, much better Tuskegee film than Red Tails. Red Tails has a lot of the same problems this movie does. It's just set in World War II. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I guess we're doing Bridge on the River Kwai next, right, Tony?
Yeah, and look, I can't believe I've never seen that film because my grandfather on my dad's side was an army medic in World War II, awarded the Burma Star. He treated a lot of POWs who came off, who came back from there. The house that me and Grace have built in Thailand is about 45 minutes away from the Bridge on the River Kwai. I've been there several times. So I think during the experience of watching Flyboys, I'm like, let's do something that I've heard is really good.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with David Lean. And you certainly can't go wrong with David Lean working with Alec Guinness as the star. I mean, you.
Yeah.
And while it is based on a novelized version of events, so it's, you know, it's almost like Where Eagles Dare in the sense that it's more closely aligned to a real historical thing than Where Eagles Dare, but it is based on a novelization of the events that kind of embellishes. That being said, it's an example of a really, really well-written and compelling historical narrative rather than what this is and what Hurt Locker was. I think you're going to love that movie. I could be wrong. You could walk away hating it, but I think you'll really love it. And I can't wait. You've given me the excuse to watch it again. Finally, you know, I haven't sat down and watched it in a long time. I would double your super chat total to be able to go back in time and stop myself from watching this. Yeah. Tim Ward watched the movie before the stream. Sorry about that. Look,
Tim, you should just let me and Michael feel the pain for you.
Yeah. Master Son, thank you for the super chat. He says, for your legal trouble with airing this movie, I'm sure they can't afford good lawyers or even Leo Getz. Yeah. Ooh, Master Son, you're gonna have to tell us that story one day. I was deployed in the desert when they did a trial run of Red Tails for the military to preview. Tell us that story one day, sir. Jim Largo, thank you for the kind super chat. He says, just enjoying hanging out with you two, no matter the film. We enjoy hanging out with you too, Jim. Thank you for being here. All right. Well, you will see us next. The next War Stories will be Bridge on the River Kwai, which will be 2 Fridays from today. So what will be next Friday? It'll be the Friday after next. Can't wait to see you guys for that. I can't wait to build the thumbnail for it too. That's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. I'm confident I'm going to like it because I do like David Lean films, Alec Guinness.
Yeah.
It's one. I don't know how I've gotten this far in my life and not watched it.
It's okay. We all have those. We all have those. Time makes fools of us all. There's no like set stack of films where, if you're mature, there's no set stack of films where you're going to look at somebody and go, you've never gotten around to seeing that? You want to look at them and go, well, there's only almost as many movies as there are books to read in a lifetime. So, you know, you're going to miss a few. I've always said it's never about not having seen it. It's about being unwilling to see it. That's my issue with films. It's like, if you're not willing to see it, that's where you, meaning the general you and I, are going to run into loggerheads. If you're willing to see something, it doesn't matter if you've never seen it, but there's a lot of stuff people would find out I've never seen before. And I'll be like, yeah, it just, you know, so.
Well, did you not tell me that you haven't seen Platoon? Or you haven't seen it for a long time?
I haven't seen Platoon for a really, really long time. I've seen Full Metal Jacket. The one I haven't seen is Casualties of War. That's the one I haven't seen with Sean Penn and Michael J. Fox. I haven't seen that one. So, Analog, loving this series. The Analog Toys guy, he's always here. He's always fun to have in the audience.
I'm genuinely loving this series. Whether the film is good or bad.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun so far, and a lot of people are wanting us to do Great Escape. Like I said, we're trying to, we're coming back into World War II with Bridge on the River Kwai, but thankfully we're jumping to the Pacific Theater for that one. So that, and it's also a prisoner of war thing. We will do Great Escape at some point for sure, for certain. Yeah.
And look, I don't want to map out our calendar too far.
Okay.
But so the next episode is on April Fool's Day.
Awesome.
Then the 15th. So on the 29th of April, it's only a few days after Anzac Day. So if we do Bridge on the River Kwai, then it's your turn to pick a film for
whatever
the 15th. And then for the 29th, because it is Anzac Day, I want to do an Australian film.
Yeah.
The Light Horseman with Peter Phelps.
Okay.
About the last great cavalry charge in history. I don't want to do Gallipoli. That's too many people have seen that.
Right.
The Light Horseman, I think.
Okay. I think that's a great idea. I will get that ordered right now. So I'll have it here. So
perfect.
Yeah.
So you haven't seen it?
No, I've heard the title, but I haven't seen it. No.
Yeah. The Light Horseman. So the charge at Beersheba. Been a long time since I've seen it, but from what I remember, it was a great film.
Yeah,
the kind of film that they don't make anymore. You know,
right?
So,
Cromer, I just want to say, based on your comment, I think it's a shame that movie-going audiences have lost appreciation for a good slow burn. Now, granted, there have been too many bad slow burns, which have burned people to the slow burn. But really, really well-written stories with a slow burn are some of the best movies ever made. I firmly believe that. All right. Well, everybody, Top Secret is historically accurate, right? No, but it's funny. All right. Well, I gotta run and pick up a copy of The Light Horseman, so I have it for the next show. So everybody, thanks for joining us for this one. This was fun, and we'll see you on the next War Stories. Talk to you
looking forward
later.
to it.
See y'all.